of Americans think President Trump should end his campaign after he was found guilty in his hush money trial, according to a new ABC News Ipsos poll. But the same poll shows a vast majority of Republicans want Trump to stay in the race. Joining us now to discuss what Trump's guilty verdict means for the Republican Party is GOP strategist Malik Abdul. Welcome, Malik.
Thanks for having me. Finally on set.
Yes, glad to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
It's a real pleasure. Okay, so I got to say, coming at this from the left, where there's a great deal of discontent about Joe Biden as well, for different kinds of issues, but important issues nonetheless. What should we make of looking at these two historically unpopular candidates with huge slights against them? Biden getting tarred and feathered for his approach in Gaza, also for his age from the jump, with something like 75% of Democratic voters not wanting him to be the nominee. Now you have Donald Trump, who was also a historically unpopular candidate, now has this as an additional burden. Is there any room here for a discussion of a different candidate being in the mix?
No. I don't think it is at all, because we live in this duopoly system, and I don't think that there's any energy, despite the fact that people may say that. And for instance, you have someone like an RFK, and RFK could be a vessel for the disaffected Republicans and Democrats, but RFK is not a Bernie. You're talking to someone who, before I was a Trump bro, I voted for Bernie in the primary of 2016, and before then I was an Obama voter. But even I recognize in this space now as a Republican, there are certain things that, even though I say it, there are certain things that people don't want me to say when it's being critical of the party or Donald Trump. And so there isn't even a lot of space in the Republican Party, as you can imagine, to be more, and I say objective. People just say, oh, you're just critical, you hate Donald Trump. It's like, I voted for the guy twice. But there is no room for objectivity in our political space, and I think that that's what you're seeing. So another candidate, I don't know what that candidate would look like, but what I will say is that that candidate has to be a Bernie or a Barack Obama or a Trump, in the sense that they can galvanize people, and I don't see that in this on either side at this point.
No, absolutely not. It's Trump's party until he dies.
Yes.
If he loses, he could run again in 2028. There's nothing to stop him. And he has the enthusiasm of the Republican Party. He has so many, people who, now that he's been convicted, they want to vote for him multiple times if that were possible. The question, though, is there that sliver of Republicans who did not want Trump, who preferred like a Nikki Haley, who are moderate or swing voters, or not, maybe they voted for Biden in 2020, but they're really unhappy with the policies they got. Do they live in Michigan and Pennsylvania? Is it possible he loses enough of them because of the conviction that he would lose the election? I
have always said, much to the chagrin of many, that there is a possibility Donald Trump could lose. There's no way that you can just predict that, of course, Donald Trump is. Yes, there are possibilities there, and I think a lot of that won't be with this trial, this recent trial. I don't think much is going to change after the trial. We'll probably see, I would say, maybe a month from now to see whether or not there's any movement from Joe Biden. If there is movement, consistent movement for Joe Biden, I think it's something that Trump should be concerned about. But outside of that, I don't see much movement in this political space. People saying, well, no, I'm not going to vote. Donald Trump's personality, and I've said this many times before, the thing that will railroad Donald Trump is Donald Trump's personality. And we know that because in 2020, it wasn't the federal government's response to COVID that many people had a problem with. It was Donald Trump's personal response to COVID, and he can get in his own way. That will hurt him in the fall.
I just had this debate with someone on my own podcast who I have a lot of respect for, but who was explaining sort of aspects of the vote blue no matter who narrative that he does buy into, saying that, oh, well, at the end of the day, I've lost people very close to me because of COVID, and Trump's pandemic response just was beyond the pale for me. And I said, well, whose pandemic response exactly? Dr. Fauci's, who was the one that was advising Donald Trump, and then the one that was advising Joe Biden. He specifically was criticizing some of the mask mandate advice. And I was like, well, that was straight from Dr. Fauci,
that was the government,
who remained in control after Donald Trump was out of office. So I take your point. I do wonder if you feel differently about what the outcome of some of these other trials might be that are more substantial in nature than this hush money trial.
Absolutely. And I've said this was the weakest case even if you listen to people on both sides, they say, well, this was kind of the weakest case. If the classified documents case or the January 6th case or the RICO case, if they were going to trial, it is very possible, and they had a conviction by now, we would have a much different conversation. But trying to explain to people here, well, Donald Trump wasn't actually charged with the felony, the FEC violation like Hillary Clinton was, that the FEC fined them and over the Steele dossier. That was an actual FEC violation. When you try to explain to people, well, he didn't use campaign funds. This one is a bit different. If it were some of those other cases, they were probably more cut and dry than this case. I don't think that this case, people, many Democrats and critics of Trump would like for this to be the case where people would finally say, I am washing my hands with him. But right now, we're not seeing that. And I'm not convinced that this case will actually take us there.
You're a Republican strategist. Are there Republicans saying, man, I hope they do jail Trump because the optics of it, the argument that the system is weaponized against Trump, the Democrats are doing anything they can to get him. Trump himself said, if they send me to jail, they send me to jail, so be it. Is there a sense among Republicans this is actually good for his campaign? This could be helping him? The perception of persecution that he has made his entire reelection scheme?
Sure. There are people out there who say that, and my response to that is that they're all lying. No, it's good. Yes, it's including. No one wants, first of all, no one wants to be convicted of anything. No one wants to go to jail. I understand the optics argument, and as a strategist, you can make something from the optics argument. But the notion that somehow there's any benefit to being convicted or in jail, this is stuff that people say when they get on television. When you get them behind closed doors, it is a much different conversation, and I can almost assure you that those conversations behind closed doors, Donald Trump is not saying, I hope they send me to jail. He's not hoping for that.
So as a strategist, what do Republicans do? Because there is a lot of incentive from the Democrats to emphasize Trump as a felon. People are frankly already mad at Biden that he's not talking about that more. On the other side, you already have huge fundraising numbers in the wake of this, with the Trump campaign raising $53 million after the verdict in basically a 48-hour period of time. How do you manage, what do you do with that money, rather? How do you manage the fact that there is this sliver of 7% of Trump-committed voters who said prior to the verdicts coming down that they would be less likely to vote for Donald Trump if he were found guilty? You have some, mixed messaging from Trump about Israel and Gaza, but that is a hot-button issue that I think he is wise enough to not want to be too specific about, because he sees that there's a lot of polarization in America, a lot of anti-war people on the right who don't want to see as much American dollars going overseas, regardless of where it's going. I mean, what would you do to fortify Trump going forward from this verdict?
Well, what the party has to do is actually get on one accord. Like, our messaging is pretty terrible. It's kind of all over the place. But you're going to have to talk about a vision forward. Now, this case has given Donald Trump some energy to talk about the system is rigged, but the system is rigged will not win you an election. You have to have the boots on the ground. So we have organizations like the Black Conservative Federation. They're actually out there with get out to vote strategies. And let's be clear, this is a get out to vote operation here. Anybody who tells you that they're going to sell you on policy, it sounds good. I've written policy. I understand how all of that works. But the Republicans are going to have to focus on a vision forward for the country. If they are relitigating everything that has happened to Donald Trump, and a lot of that stuff, I mean, we have the Russiagate story. A lot of that stuff has been unfair. If we are stuck with having to relitigate what has happened in the past, not paint a vision forward, and we don't come to an agreement on what our position on, like, for instance, abortion is. If we do not have a solid answer on that, I was much more amenable. I hate Nikki Haley's her neocon, she's literally just talking about signing rockets, saying, I hate that part of her, but her position on abortion, I thought was it was a practical position that the Republicans need to get behind. Don't push this federal
abortion bans.
Don't try to do anything like that. Donald Trump is even having difficulty explaining or navigating this states' rights versus federal government space.
A weird comment about contraception bans.
Yeah, and then having to come back, well, no, that's not what I meant. Again, Donald Trump,
Yeah.
your mouth can get you into trouble. Republicans are going to have an answer on abortion, and I think that they will be able to learn from Nikki Haley. I thought that she straddled the fence on that well, but if we don't have a good answer, if it is 6-week ban is good, contraceptions are, we're going to lose. We're just going to lose.
Yeah. Malik Abdul, thank you so much for joining us. More Rising right after this.